Fabulous. Yeah, we'll start at 3 minutes past. I think that seems quite a good thing for then to anybody else to drop in. And it's quite ironic that I am running a from shit show to shit hot workshop today because this morning everything was a shit show with the tech. The tech just completely went out the window. Last night everything was working very smoothly, and then this morning Zoom didn't work, PowerPoint didn't work, the microphone didn't then work. So I have rebooted about 10 billion times. So we'll see what happens when we go. But actually, I think that's quite a good reminder for me and for other people that actually all that stuff going wrong for me in the past would have been a huge trigger to actually, I feel really shit about myself because I can't even get all the tech to work. And that means that I'm not good enough. Whereas actually, when you have got your shit together, stuff like that, yeah, it's annoying, but it doesn't derail you in the same way. So I think it's a little nice. It's almost like the universe made it happen. That's the way I'm going to look at it. Yeah, love that reframe. Thanks, Cheryl. Absolutely. Okay, so presentation. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint. Don't worry. Can everybody see that? Don't think I can see comments while I am doing the presentation. So if somebody could just unmute, if you don't mind, and just tell me if you can see that picture of me. Oh yeah, I've got a thumbs up from Carolyn. Fab. Good. I can't see time. Let me just get my phone because I don't want to run over time either. Okay, fab. So, welcome to the workshop, which is from shit show to shit hot, and the 3 proven steps that are going to help you really get your life back without spending any more time or years and years and years more in therapy. And the title, my little snazzy title from shit show to shit hot, has come from a lot of my clients feel like I just feel like a shit show. I've been a shit show myself. So the title seemed quite apt about when we're really not feeling good in our heads, life does feel like a complete shit show. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to share what I've learned over the past 15 years of working with people one-to-one and this about what's really landing in the therapy space now and what's not working and what those 3 steps are that you need to do in order to get your shit together. And getting your shit together really can mean anything. It's anything that you want it to be. It might be that you want to get a clearer head. It might be that you want to give up drinking. It might be that you want to give up emotionally eating. Whatever it is, it's going to be relevant to you, and we'll talk about that a bit later on in this. So I'm going to walk you through the 3 steps that I've seen time and time again in how to get yourself from shit show to shit hot without all that therapy. And I'm going to give you some homework. So you are going to go away with some homework to do, but these are things that you can start doing today. That, isn't just theory, that is actually going to start to shift your thinking. And then after we go through those steps, I'm going to talk a little bit about my program. And if anybody wants any further help with that, I'll talk about that because I am a business after all. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So a little bit about me. And I think some of you already know me, but my life was a complete shit show. Years ago, I was self-medicating with food, alcohol, drugs, you name it, I'd tried it. And I tried so much therapy. I'd tried, traditional therapy. I'd tried NLP, CBT, psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, aromatherapy, anything with a bloody therapy on the end, in the hope that I would change how I feel. And while those things all gave me insight, maybe not the aromatherapy, but nothing actually stuck. And I still had this overwhelming sense of not really wanting to be here anymore, just feeling really, really, really shit. And it's really frustrating because you're like doing all this therapy, you're really showing up for yourself, you think you are, you're following all these steps, and you still feel like a hot mess. So, but what I learned the hard way is that through those many, many years of unhappiness, what I really started to realize is that you can't outthink your way out of an emotional problem. So, lots of coaches, therapists, that kind of traditional route were telling me to, just change your thoughts. And yeah, thoughts do create feelings. So we know that our thoughts create our feelings and emotions. But my feelings were so overpowering that my thoughts just didn't really stand a chance. I'd be sat in these coaching programs and people would be going, "Oh my God, I've got this biggest breakthrough." And then I'd be thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? Because I still feel like this complete shit show. And am I destined to be miserable forever? But the shift that changed everything was when I realized that I had to shift things from the emotional level first, and then the beliefs would follow. So that's what I started doing. And I stopped bullying myself into, trying to think differently. And I went straight to that emotional level first. The place where, for me, and where I see my clients, is where all that spiraling kind of starts. And that, when I started to look at things from the emotional level, that is when the big shifts changed. And then now, having worked with clients for, like I said before, for the best part of 15 years, most of who have tried all of the therapies, they've tried the journaling, they've tried the law of attraction, all of that. I can tell you that this really is the missing piece. So I'm going to talk in these 3 steps that you need to do in order to change. And a lot of this is really starting at that emotional level, because that's where the reset happens. And the best part of these 3 steps is that absolutely anybody can do them. If I can do it, believe me, anyone can do it. I really did think that there was something fundamentally wrong with me because, as I said earlier, I was on these coaching programs and these people were like, "Oh my God, just getting all these wonderful things happening for me." And nothing was happening for me until I started to change at that emotional level. But before we go into that, I just want you to kind of have a think about personally, what does shit show to shit hot mean to you? So maybe it's like waking up in the morning, glad that you even exist, because there was a moment, some time in my life where I just like, I didn't even want to get up in the morning and thought, what is the point? Maybe it is finally shutting down that overthinking hamster wheel. And for those of you that know me, I am a bit sweary, so let's give that little bastard a rest. So maybe it's that no more snapping at your kids or partner. I see this a lot with clients. They come to me, one of the biggest things that I've had partners thank me because they're like, "Oh my God, my partner's no longer snapping at me," which is great and absolutely fantastic. And actually, it's great for the person who was doing the snapping because it gets rid of all of your guilt. Maybe it's that you want to stop self-medicating with too much wine, too much chocolate, too much Amazon Prime. Those things that we do, they're all self-sabotaging behaviors because we want to soothe ourselves, because we need to stop the chaos that's going on in our minds. Maybe that you just want some more confidence so that you can, handle criticism without crumbling like I don't know, like a stale biscuit. Or maybe you want hotter sex. So this is a big one, actually. A lot of clients come to me, they don't feel confident in the bedroom. They're not having sex with their partners. And actually, by the time we finish working together, they feel super confident, super sexy, super hot. And those that are with partners are having a lot more sex. Maybe you want some rock solid self-belief in yourself. Maybe you just don't want to lose your shit at work, when your mum pushes your buttons, your sister pushes your buttons, any of that. Maybe you want to get rid of the work guilt, the mum guilt, all of that kind of stuff. So, on to step 1. Actually, sorry, I just want to go back to that one actually quickly. So, just really have a think about what that getting your shit together is for you, and I want you to just have those thoughts in your head as we go through this workshop, and start to think about what it is when I give you the homework that you can change in order to get the outcomes that you want. Sorry, there's someone in the waiting room. Let me just let them in. Uh, there's, I think, have I just let someone in? Let me just see. Hopefully I've just let them in. Yeah. Hi, Kelly. Great to have you here. I was just talking about what does going from shit show to shit hot mean for you, and just think about what the outcomes are that you want in from you and your life when you go through this type of thing. And actually, it doesn't really matter what you want, whether you want to have more sex, whether you want to feel more confident, whether you want to, ask for that pay rise, say no when you normally say yes. It really doesn't matter what you want. Every single thing is available to you, and it doesn't have to take as long as you might think. So let's move on to step one. So step one really is about getting rid of the emotional crap. So remember, what we're talking about here is fixing things from the emotional level, not just endlessly like circling those thoughts over and over and over. So for those of you that have been in that therapy space, you've done the coaching, you've done the self-awareness, and you're probably thinking, yeah, more clearing out the old crap. This is really, really boring. But I want you to think, have you really, really done it? We think we have, but then our behaviors tell a completely different story. I had a client, many clients actually, that come to me and they're like, I've done the therapy to death. I really feel like I can't do any more therapy. I can tell you exactly why I am the way I am, but I still feel shit. And that's exactly it, because in those traditional types of therapy, you go over and over and over your past, and that becomes your present. The mind, it cannot tell the difference between past and present. So the whole time we go over and over and over it, we stay in that pain. And that's not a place I want to be. That's not a place I want my clients to be. It's not a place I think that anybody should be, because it's really fucking painful. And you just keep reliving that problem. And actually, what we need to do is, yes, we need to understand the past, because it does have a bearing on our present and how we behave today. But actually, we've got to get rid of it. We've got to let it go. And I genuinely think that 100 years from now, we'll look back and we'll go, what? You know, all we did was talk and talk and talk about it. What was the point of that? You know, and it's really like, I just think it's very, very outdated. It's kind of like if you, I don't know, broke your leg, you wouldn't go to the doctor and go, oh, let's talk about this for 6 months. But I'm not saying that traditional therapy doesn't have a place either. So before anybody goes, what, shut up, what are you about? What about women? Traditional therapy does have a place. I think it can be life-saving if you're going, for through a bereavement, maybe if you just lost your job. I do think it has a place there, because you need to talk about that stuff. But for really deep-rooted issues, I just think it doesn't cut the mustard. Definitely not for me. I just kept going over and over and over and reliving that past. So what we need to do is get rid of that past. So when we're holding on to anger, guilt, resentment from the past, and particularly, and this is one thing I think a lot of people don't talk about, is when you hold that anger and guilt and resentment about yourself, that kind of gets your nervous system on red alert. Our nervous system is wired for survival, and when it thinks you're under some kind of threat, when you've got that anger, guilt, resentment towards yourself, your amygdala, and that's the panic button in your brain, it hijacks everything. And that's when, oh, hang on, I've moved on too quickly. I'm getting overexcited. And that's when your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, rational part of your brain, it just goes offline. So those emotions just completely take over. And that's why when you become triggered by something, those emotions take over and no amount of positive thinking is going to work. So it's kind of like, here's my analogy. Spoiler alert, you can't redecorate a flooding house. You've seen that already. You can't, I had a flood recently and I was going to have the decorators in and they're like, well, there's no point us coming because the flood, until you fix the flood, it's absolutely pointless to try and paint the walls. And it's kind of, think of that, your head a bit like that. We're doing these years of talking therapy, we're doing these affirmations, but what we're fundamentally doing is painting over the cracks. But that emotional water, if you like, is running underneath. And that's why things don't stick. We've got to reset the nervous system first, get you out of survival mode, and that's when lasting change can happen. And one of the most powerful ways that I've found of doing that is releasing the anger, releasing the guilt, releasing that resentment, unblocking that drain, especially the stuff that you've been buried, the stuff that you've turned on yourself around. And, that the client that I was talking about earlier, therapy hasn't been wasted, but nothing actually shifted until she started doing this. She was still overeating, she was still snapping at her kids, she was still sabotaging herself. But when we worked on clearing that, releasing that anger once and for all, using my emotional detox method, which we'll talk about in a bit, she stopped flying off the handle. That heavy weight she'd carried for years was gone. The emotional eating stopped. She started sleeping properly. It was a huge game changer. So, recognizing the past just isn't enough. Understanding it isn't enough. You have to let it go. Because while you're subconsciously holding on to all of that anger, that guilt, that shame, that resentment towards yourself or other people, life's going to keep feeling like a bit of a shit show, if I'm honest. And that is just unfortunately how it is. So, some quick wins. And again, when I go through these quick wins, I want you to think back to the beginning slide about what you want to get from this in your own life. So, what can you do today to get rid of that emotional crap? So, first of all, I want you to start noticing when the past is leaking into your present. So, if you snap in, if you get home from like a really busy day at work and you're starting to snap at the kids, what is it that's making you feel that stress? It's not necessarily the stress of work that you might think it is. It's, what does that stress mean for you in that moment? That stress at work means I'm not good enough. That stress at work means I'm a failure. So, and all of those old beliefs are stuff that we brought from our past into our present. So even just noticing that, it gives you the power to change it. And then this one, I love this task because I think it's so powerful. So write down just one bit of anger, maybe a bit of guilt or resentment that you've been carrying. It might be anger from somebody in the past. It might be a situation in the past. It might even be guilt at yourself. Write it down and write it in as much detail as possible. Handwrite it on paper, get it out of your head onto the paper. You don't need to do anything about it. You don't need to think about it. Just write. And then I want you to burn it afterwards because you're going to let it go. And this sounds really, really, really simple, but having done this again and again and again in my life for lots of different things, it is hugely, hugely powerful. Good. Okay. So, I can't see any comments, so we'll do a Q&A at the end anyway. So, if there are any comments, I apologise. I can't see while I'm sharing a screen. So, on step 2. Okay. So, step 2 in becoming shit hot is you have to build a brain that you actually want to live with. So most people in life build a brain based on other people's thoughts, other people's ideas, and then we wonder why we're unhappy. So, we listen to what teachers say, we listen to what our parents have told us, we listen to what caregivers have said. And, if your parents' opinion is that you're not good enough, you then live that for the rest of your life. Um, and it's crazy. And we don't even realize that we're doing it. We adopt other people's ideas of what's wrong and right. We adopt other people's opinions and what they tell us. And we believe, as kids, we believe that everything they tell us is true. And then we end up living this really weird life that is based on somebody else's ideas and opinions. So to me, it's like I didn't even realize that I had options, even as a young adult, because I just thought everything that my parents said was true and I had to live to their tune. It was my responsibility to look after them. I wasn't good enough because I didn't really have the money to do that. And, you know, and I was selfish. That was another thing that I was constantly told. So I was living this tune, my life to somebody else's tune. And no wonder I was like in these depths of misery, because when you've got that playing on in the back of your mind all of the time, I mean, you're going to be fucking miserable. So it's kind of like I call it the greatest hits of misery. So this was definitely my soundtrack of my life. And logically that this isn't true. But again, we're talking about the emotion here. From the emotional point of view, you are living on this Spotify list of the greatest hits of misery. Track one is your overwhelm, then it's your guilt, then it's your overthinking. And unless you reset that brain just keeps going on repeat over and over and over again. And most therapy, again, I know I said this earlier, but I think this is a really, really important point. Most therapy tells you to change the thoughts, to change the emotion, and then the action. But when you're in this big emotional meltdown, it's really, really difficult to start doing a bit of CBT. Sorry, and I said CBT earlier, cognitive behavioral therapy. If anybody doesn't know what that was or what that is, it's around reframing your thoughts in the moment. And actually, when you're in that awful emotional meltdown, it is extremely difficult to look at things from a logical perspective. And we've got thousands and thousands of negative thoughts, but actually we've got very few negative feelings. We've got fear, shame, sadness, guilt. So for my thinking, I was like, wouldn't it be much easier to change the emotions first and then the thoughts? If you reset the feeling, and there are just a few different feelings, you can shift thousands and thousands of thoughts at once. And this is just a much more efficient way of changing our beliefs and changing our actions. So, if you change how you feel, oh, I've moved on again. I'm getting too excited again. If you change how you feel, you can then change the thoughts and then the actions, whether your actions are overeating, over drinking, overthinking, working too hard, whatever, those actions become far, far easier to change. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So that's why inside my program, we use an emergency reset button, which sounds like you just push a button, but there is no button involved. I call it the emergency reset button just because I wanted a snazzy title for it, but there is actually no button involved. But this helps how you change your emotions in the moment. We think we can't change how we feel. People say, oh, I can't change how I feel. I can't, I'm not going to apologize for how I feel. And you don't need to do any of those things. But actually, we can change how we feel. We absolutely can. And once you change that emotion, you are then out of survival mode and you can choose a new thought, a new action, a completely new response. But, and this is the big but, you have to you can't wait to use this when you're in the middle of a meltdown. You've got to understand how it works first. It's kind of like a fire drill. You don't figure out where the doors are once the fire is going. I think you've got to work this out first, and you've got to practice, practice, practice so that when you do have those meltdowns, your mind automatically knows how to switch. So for me, going back to my journey again, I would be in these coaching calls, and coaches would say, when you're feeling really shit, when you're feeling really down, just go to your favorite playlist and put on a tune and then start dancing, and that shifts your energy, which is true. That is true. But when I was really in those meltdowns, and feeling super, super shit, I didn't even want to get off the sofa to go and, open my laptop and listen and search through and listen to music. You need to find a way that is going to change up here. And so you don't need to do anything, but in the moment you can literally change. And then, but you've got to have learned that before you get into those emotional states, if that makes sense. But the good news is that the brain can rewire itself. Neuroplasticity is real. And if you don't know what neuroplasticity is, it's our brain is made up of thousands and thousands of neurons. Me picking up a pen like this, that's a neurological pathway that I've created. We create thousands and thousands. The over drinking, overthinking, all of that is they are different neurological pathways, and we can change them. Neuroplasticity is 100% real. You can change how you feel, but we've got to interrupt the old patterns for long enough to lay down those new tracks. So here is a really simple example now of how your feelings can change. So I want you to imagine yourself, you've had a really stressful day at work. You come home and you just want to go to the cupboard and get a load of biscuits. So I want you to think, in that moment, your emotions feel so powerful. And it's like, nothing's going to stop me from having those biscuits. I just want those biscuits. Just give me the biscuits. But then I want you to imagine that in that moment, somebody comes in and they say to you, you've just won the lottery. What's going to happen? I can guarantee that the last thing you're going to be thinking about is those biscuits, unless you are a multimillionaire already, of course, in which case maybe it's not going to have the same impact. But I know from most people, like you are literally going to forget about those biscuits. And that's because your emotional state has just flipped in a second. It's same you, but it's a different emotion and a different action. You're not going to go and get those biscuits. But we've got to learn how to do that, how to flip that switch without having a lottery win, basically. And you can learn how to change that emotion in the moment in your head without a lottery win. And then you've just got to practice, practice, practice if you want that long-term success. So as I said earlier, this is how it works. Our emotions drive our behaviors. So if we change the emotion, and then the action changes as well. So when you operate from this place, you start making decisions logically. You take that emotion out and you stop being triggered by things. You can look at things in a whole new perspective, from that logical perspective rather than that emotional one. And that makes us a whole lot happier. And when you change how you feel, you then change your thoughts and you stop being your own worst enemy. Or, as somebody once said to me, your own worst Emily. So, and I quite like that little phrase, although I'm definitely not my own worst Emily anymore. So happiness is not about forcing you to think positive. It is around really building that emotional energy that actually supports you. And that is essentially how you go from feeling like a shit show to shit hot. It all starts changing, that emotional energy, feeling really good about yourself. It's about changing that relationship you've got with you. When you are in that emotional state, a much better emotional state, it's far, far easier then to change that internal dialogue. When you've let go of the anger, the guilt, the resentment, it becomes much easier to reset yourself and set yourself up for a life that you actually want. And then that work that you do, when you put in that hard work, it has an impact on every single thing in your life. So it's really kind of about giving yourself those tools, changing that emotional state, and then just you can then show up as the person that you're meant to be, that confident person, the person that really loves herself. I know that sounds a bit wishy-washy. Oh man, love myself. But it's true. We've got to love ourselves unconditionally, and really from an emotional level. And, get once we've changed that state, it then becomes so much easier to get rid of those shitty beliefs that I'm not good enough, I don't matter, I have no value. And that's when we start to feel lighter. That's when we finally get a brain that we actually want to live with, you know. So at the end of the day, it's super simple. Super simple. From to go for a shit show to shit hot, you don't need more self-help books. You don't need more talking therapy. You just need to change that emotional state. Super, super simple, right? Maybe not. Oh yeah, and I think I've just covered that. But yeah, changing your emotional state really does change how you see yourself. When we are, I guess it's a bit like, the first time you ever fall in love and you're like, oh my God, I'm so in love, everything's amazing. Somebody like, I don't know, cuts in front of you in the queue in Sainsbury's, and you're like, oh, it doesn't matter because everything's great, and it's that emotional state, and that's what we need to operate in most of the time in order to feel good about our lives. Okay, so what can you do about it today? So here we go. So I want you to think about pattern interrupt. Do something ridiculous to break the loop. Now, your brain cannot stay in panic mode when you're doing something ridiculous to change the loop. So I had a client, and I use this example a lot with my clients. I'm like, just think of yourself doing a Mooney. If you're stressed about something, stressed about sending an email, stressed about talking to someone, worried about any of that stuff, eh, just picture yourself doing a Mooney. And it automatically flips that switch. It flips that emotional state. I mean, you're not going to go and do it, hopefully. You might get, caught up in HR if you do, but it flips that switch. And once you flip that switch, you will then start to construct the email or speaking to your boss in a much calmer way. Silly works, and it is definitely backed by science. The next thing I want you to do is a 24-hour digital detox. So, comparing yourself to Karen from accounts gets you nowhere. If she's just run another half marathon and you're like, oh my God, I just really need to be like her, it gets you nowhere. I feel like social media, it has such a big impact on how we feel because we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. And what good does that do us? Your brain needs that reset. Let's not stop going on repeat, going on repeat, going on repeat. And I do this with clients all the time, give them a 24-hour digital detox. And that means moving away from WhatsApp as well, emails, social media, and you will be so surprised at how much extra headspace you have and how much better you feel. And I do this myself from time to time, and every time I'm like, oh my God, I just feel so much different. It's like every time I do it, it's like I sort of rethink, why don't I do this more actually? So yeah, do the 24-hour digital detox, and also write down your top three personal values, and ask yourself, am I living my life to these values? If one of your values is that you're a really fun person and you're surrounding yourself with boring people, then of course you're going to be miserable. If one of your values is kindness and you're working in an environment that really isn't kind, then of course you're going to be miserable. So I just want you to kind of think, what are my top three values as a person, and am I living my life to those? Okay, good. So the last step, just going to check the time. Um, yeah, I've still got plenty of time, I think. So the last step in becoming shit hot is building a backbone and bounce back. And so this is all about resilience. because without resilience, life is just going to keep knocking you flat. So resilience isn't about kind of acting tough or pretending that nothing gets to you. It's about building a really rock solid relationship with yourself. Because, spoiler alert, no one is coming to save you. And that was a big thing for me. I always wanted someone to save me, but they never came. Um, and here's the problem with most of those traditional methods is that they do keep you in that victim mode because they're all about sympathy. You know, you sit in that chair. I remember I used to go to a counselor years ago, and I would be saying, you know, all this stuff about my parents, and she would just be sympathizing with me. And I'd said to her one day, I was like, look, I could be telling you a crock load of shit and you're just sympathizing with me. It doesn't move you forward. It keeps you stuck in that victim mode story, you know. Um, so we really need to move out of that. Otherwise, we are just going to keep repeating the story, repeating the story. I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim, and we're just going to feel like a shit hot mess. So the truth really is that your emotions are driving the show, and this is why just positive thinking on its own, we do have to think positively, but just positive thinking on its own is like shoveling shit up a hill. You know, one wave of anger, shame, guilt, it hijacks that nervous system, and that's when the willpower collapses. That's when we reach for the wine, that's when we reach for the chocolate, that's when we do a bit more shopping, and that's when we start to hate ourselves, and then we get caught in that loop. So you need to build yourself with a shield of self-esteem to build resilience. This is what I call a shield of self-esteem. So when we've built ourselves up internally, then criticism comes in, but it doesn't penetrate this shield of self-esteem. Bad days don't then turn into bad weeks. You don't need the wine, the biscuits, the Amazon Prime. And it is really about showing up for yourself every single day, which sounds so boring. It's the unsexy stuff. It's the everyday stuff. It's the change in your language. It's those keeping small promises to yourself. It's stacking the daily wins until your brain accepts that you are good enough. It's showing up for yourself every single day. It's learning how to work with your mind so it becomes your friend and not your enemy. It's checking in with that mind constantly. It's questioning every single thing that you think, feel, and believe about you and your world. And this is where people get really, really unstuck because they don't have that consistency. They don't do it every day. We want everything to change in a day or two. We want to jump into a new program. We want to start something, learn something new, and we want it done in a day or two. But the reality is that it takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort. But with the right tools and the shortcuts, we can get to that, start to change that emotional level much more quickly and easily than we're led to believe. We are what's the word? I don't want to say brainwashed. That's the wrong word, but we're taught that we've got to spend years in therapy to feel better. We're taught that we've got to go over and over and over this shit for so long before things can change, and actually that is just not true at all. You can do it. Yes, it's hard work. Yes, it takes energy. Yes, it takes effort, but the other side is so, so worth it, I promise. I went from wanting to kill myself to actually, I really like myself now. I look in the mirror, I love what I see, and it's great, but you have to put in that energy and effort. So, what can we do today to do this? So quick wins: catch that victim mode voice. The second you start to hear yourself going, poor me, why me, oh, it always happens to me, just start to look at that and start to flip that idea. Okay, what can I do to change and move out of that victim mode? Because the truth is that no one is coming to save you. You're the only person that can do that. Step two is I want you to step out of your comfort zone every single day. So this is about just setting really small, uncomfortable tasks for yourself every day. Maybe you just want to say no to something you would normally say yes to. It doesn't have to be big. And in fact, actually big is worse than small. The brain moves changes in the long term when we do small, tiny, weeny steps. It doesn't like big change. It doesn't like these massive, big, massive changes that people talk about. You know, if you're charging £50 an hour and then you suddenly go to charging £5,000 an hour, the brain doesn't like it and it will always take you back to what's familiar. But if we do tiny, weeny steps every single day, that's when change, long-term change happens. So it's about kind of stepping out of that comfort zone, and that helps build the resilience. It helps build your shield of self-esteem. It helps you start to believe that you're good enough. And then finally, this is one that people find really, really difficult. But this is the quickest way to build yourself up with that shield of self-esteem. It feels really uncomfortable at first, but it is definitely the quickest way to get rid of that I'm not good enough bollocks. So it is about praising yourself every day. It doesn't have to be for anything big. It can be for packing the dishwasher. It can be for taking the dog out. It can be for even getting up in the morning. Praise yourself, and you will start to feel better about yourself. And we know that when we're in an emotionally better state, then life seems better. Everything seems so much better. Okay, so just to recap, the 3 steps to going from shit show to shit hot are: 1, we've got to clear out that old crap so you're not drowning in that emotional baggage. Step 2, you've got to rewire your brain, reset the emotions first, and not get stuck on that greatest hits of misery track. And then finally, we've got to build backbone, build resilience, build that shield of self-esteem, and, you know, so that you end up backing yourself no matter what. So when you've done that, when you've done those 3 steps, here are some, oh, there we go, be the woman who saves herself. Absolutely. So when we've done that, here are the side effects that you may get from doing this work. You're going to shut down that overthinking hamster wheel, the little bastard that we talked about earlier. And actually, clients say that this is the number 1 shift, is getting that calmness in your head. No more self-medicating with Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot, whatever your choice is, chocolate and Amazon coping. Other shops are available, by the way. I keep saying Amazon. I'll probably get sued by them. Right. Maybe I could do a deal with them on... no, because then they wouldn't earn any money if I stop people shopping. That doesn't work. Anyway, your kids and partner are going to be wondering, where has the shouty mum gone? You're going to have that boss energy at work, and, you know, get rid of that imposter syndrome that so many people think. You're going to stop overgiving and overworking. That's another side effect. Drop the work guilt, the mum guilt, the partner guilt. Every bit of guilt is going to go, which is great. And actually like what you see in the mirror and love yourself naked. And yes, this is true. Leaving other people's shit with them, that is one of the biggest gifts of doing this type of work, is that when somebody criticizes you, you actually see it from a logical perspective rather than an emotional perspective. And it's their shit that they're bringing to the party. So you hand that bag of shit. You'll be able to stay calm in situations where you used to have a massive meltdown. And you can actually be happy for people. You can scroll Instagram without thinking, oh my God, they've got all their shit together. I haven't. Actually, you're going to be happy for people because you've got your shit together. And see things, you know, you're not going to see things from an emotional perspective anymore. You can just look at things from that logical perspective, so you're not triggered anymore. And that is the vibe for going from shit show to shit hot, is that you are feeling lighter, freer, calmer, and a hell of a lot funnier. I mean, I think I'm funny anyway. I think I was funny when I was miserable. So, but I'm probably funnier now I've done the work. Okay, good. So I hope that's kind of got you thinking a little bit differently about things. I'm going to move on to the program details now. Oh, I thought I'd taken out this slide, but I hadn't. Okay, so yeah, I mean, why a program? Because if you've got the same old thinking, you're going to get the same old results. You know, most people, they'll take those 3 steps, and you're absolutely fine to do that. You can take those 3 steps, you take them away, work with them, that's fine. But a lot of people dip in, they slide back, and actually that real change comes from that structured accountability and practice, practice, practice until you don't melt down anymore. And what's included in the program? Oh, surprisingly, it's the 3 steps. So it is clear out the crap. And I'll just whiz through this because we've only got like 13 minutes and I'm always conscious of time. So, we're going to clear out that crap, strip back that dead weight, get rid of the guilt, the anger, all of that baggage that you've been carrying for years, but clear it out for good this time. No more kind of going over and over and over and over it. Let's let it go. We'll build a brain that you actually want to live with. Stop being your own worst enemy. Get rid of that I'm not good enough. Start building that unshakable self-belief. Your habits, thoughts, and actions shift because your emotions are finally supporting you in that journey. And then month 3 is around kind of building this for life. So no matter what life throws at you, you have that backbone, that bounce back, and you're living the life that you want. So inside the program, you will get my brain rewire blueprint. This is all scientifically backed stuff. So I'll teach you how to rewire that blueprint. The neuroscience breakthrough method, that's the brain science behind, can't get my words out now, behind why you keep thinking, feeling and reacting the way that you do. Will give you the neurological hacks that are going to get you there in the quickest time possible. The emotional detox method that I spoke about earlier, this is how we clear out that resent, that guilt, that anger for that super fast relief in the shortest time. The nervous system reset formula, which soothes spirals in seconds and builds that emotional stability that actually sticks. The bounce back blueprint is resilience on tap. And the bonuses are the emergency reset button. Again, it's not a button, but something you do in your head. It's really a 10 seconds tool that just shifts how you feel instantly. So you can go from misery to happiness in seconds. And the self-talk detox. So clear up the way that you speak to yourself, ditch the critic and turn up that cheerleader. So you are also in the 12 weeks one-to-one stuff that we do together. You will also get direct access to me, one-to-one support, and that support is unlimited. So my job, if you like, is to get you from going from shit show to shit hot in the shortest time possible, and I will do whatever I can to help you get there. So access to me is unlimited. Some people need more support than others. So if you're thinking that this is something that you want to do, you want to join this 12-week program, this is the investment. So the full price is $4,997. This week only, weekend only, sorry, the price is going up on Monday, it's $2,497. So it really is for people who just want to get started straight away. That's the incentive to jump right in. And that is my way of rewarding you. If you want to, get on and jump in straight away, that is the link. I've done a little tiny URL link because my link to actually sign up for this was super long. So anybody trying to do it would, if you wanted to copy it down, I will put the link in the chat in a sec. But yeah, so if you think tiny URL, what the hell is that? It's where you shorten a URL down. And that's fresh forward, get your shit together, FFGYST. And there we go. So questions, I will just pop in the chat and stop sharing in a sec. The 2 links. Actually, let me just copy this one. They both work, but I'll give you the longer one and the shorter one in the chat. And let's see if we've got any questions. One sec. Right, so that's the tiny URL link. And let me just get, so it is a proper link. And I realised I've whizzed through it really, really quickly, but because there was a lot of stuff to go through. And I just wanted to leave time for questions at the end. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to either unmute, come off camera, or pop it in the chat. And we'll do some questions because I know it's a lot to take in, a lot to digest. Anybody have anything that they would like answered in this moment? If not, you can feel free to email me with any questions afterwards. In fact, I'll pop my email address in the chat as well, because sometimes you go to these things and then you're like, afterwards, why did I not ask that question? So I shall pop that in the chat. That's my email there. If anybody's got any questions that come up afterwards, I will send this out. The recording for this is going to be sent out, and the offer, don't forget, is there until Monday. If you want to jump in and work with me at that much, it was half price. I will also send out, I promised everybody who turned up live that they would get a recording, a hypnosis track of mine. So I will send that out as well. So just look out in your emails for that. You will get a copy of that over the next kind of 24 hours or so. Good. No questions from anybody? If not, we will call it a day there then. And I really, really hope that it's going to get you to go away and just think about things a little differently. And yeah, good. Thank you everybody for coming. Really, really nice. Really enjoyed this workshop. And hopefully see some of you again very soon. See you later.